16 laps in race number 2, a non-points paying round of the BNT New Zealand touring cars, and it's going to be tough for some of these guys down the field. It might be on slick tyres, but it could be just the move on the wet tyres to come out, because I think we've got some more rain on the horizon as they come around to take the start. Paul Radicic off the back of the field here in that Mustang. That car kept slipping into limp mode yesterday. They've hoped they've rectified that Mustang, as out comes the green flag. Tricky conditions, like we saw for the first 2 support categories this morning, as the cars tiptoed their way into turn 1.
Really tricky conditions, Nolts, but thankfully, as all the cars squirmed when the green light went on, nobody actually lost control of their cars. Now, in the background there, we can see Simon Evans, who was in doing that tyre change. There'll be people at home going, why didn't they put wets on before they came out? Well, the team come into the pit lane about 30 minutes before the start of this race. Cars are held in a pre-grid, and so the only time they'll get to connect is when we just saw them. The short of all of this is it's a 16-lap race, so there's plenty of time for Simon to be able to get his lap back, particularly if it starts to rain quite a lot harder, and then chase these guys down. So this is going to be intriguing as some more people come to the lane. Not as well set up as the Evans arrangement, where there's different classes of cars here. You'll see this 171 in the GT2 category using a jack. Simon's car is in the GT1 category, and so they had some onboard jacks, which is very similar to the Supercars counterparts. Airline goes in, jack it up in one go, wheels get changed, and you can send it.
And very uncommon for a pit stop cycle to happen in the BNT New Zealand V8s, apart from their endurance races that they have during the course of the year. So Simon Evans on the charge already. He's on the wet tyres. He came in prior to the start of the race, both him and Tim Edgell. Let's see what he can do with this 16-lap race. A long time to settle in, but a 28-year-old charging his way through the field. He's up to 6th position, and Paul Radicic just ahead. He's arguing with position over Nick Ross and that Total Lubricants number 7 Nissan Ultima, should get the job done nicely down here.
So that's interesting. That's something I just missed, Noel. So I was trying to work out how he's in 6th. So if he made it to the end of the pit lane before the race started, then he doesn't actually go down a lap. The one prior was the formation lap, so it's not like he has to come all the way around, catch the back of the field. He can start from the end of the pit lane.
They got out just in time. They would have shut the pit gate and held him there till the field went past at the start of the race. Paul Radicic just had a wild moment coming out of turn number 8. He got the same curve that we saw in Cam Crawford in the NZ Central Muscle Cars. Oh, the BMW gets the white line like Paul Bowden did, but they got away with it. That was a carbon copy of the exact lap from what we just saw in the earlier race.
Very different cars though. So with the Bowden entry, there's no aero helping Bowden to try and keep control of that car. You can see the wing on the back of the BMW as the rear starts to slide around. It will actually help us straighten up a little bit. Now this is just a case for Simon Evans. Got to get through this traffic. He's about 3 odd seconds faster than the guys up the road on him at the moment. So very quickly doing some numbers, we'll be able to chase them down. But the traffic will come into play. Paul Radicic in that beautiful Mustang will be sitting behind and thinking, I really wish I had a set of those Michelin slicks, wets on my car right at the moment, and not slicks.
Driving very well, over 3 decades of experience for Paul Radicic. I bumped into him in the paddock yesterday afternoon. Every time you bring up this car, he's just got this smile on his face. He's retired from full-time racing now, as you know, but he really is enjoying his time with the Collins Motorsport team and having a chance to what will be the future of this category. That Mustang you see right now will be the future. The 2-door American muscle cars will dominate this category when the new season starts at the end of next year.
While we were talking about Radicic, Nick Ross was able to make his way past Barney in that little BMW. And just back to your point on Radicic, on slicks in these greasy conditions, he's only got a lazy 700 plus horsepower at his disposal, so that will be making things easy for him.
Yeah, not a day to have 900 horsepower, one would think. Here's the race start replay with Nick Chester and Lance Hughes, who lead this race at the moment. Watching Nick Ross going down the inside. The Ultima slightly smaller grid, with the fact we had at least 4 cars in the pits changing over to wet tyres after coming out on the slicks. And it was pretty evident when we saw the slick tyre coming off. Simon Evans' car had that big clear sheen across the top. Definitely not the right conditions out there.
So this looks like we're on board here with Rob Wallace. very, very tentative on that throttle. A little bit of throttle, a little bit of brake. Just watching his steering inputs here, you can notice how gentle and slow they are. You have to be like that in these conditions. No problems for Simon Evans. He's on those Michelin wets, so he's able to choose any line he wants. Radicic up ahead, though, out on that exit curb at the hairpin, and the car just sliding around Evans. Now in front of Lance Hughes.
Up to second place now, as they still continue to work on the Nigel Carl car. Second of the Dale ITM entries in the pits. So Evans, who started at the back of the field and then some on the wet tyres. Well, this is how you and I would change tyres. Not handy in these kind of race conditions for the Dale ITM team. Several laps down now, but lucky this is not a points race today.
5 nuts going on to those wheels to hold them on, and an old school jack being used, so taking a lot longer. Doesn't actually look like there's too much of a rush going on there either, Nolts.
He stays in the pits along with Eric Hennepoff in the 57 machines. Around comes Paul Radicic, Nick Ross, these guys running back in 4th and 5th position. This car prepared by the Mitchell Race Extreme team. I pointed out over the weekend this Rouse Yates NASCAR power plant that's capable of 900 horsepower. They've got it tuned to about 700 right now. One of its kind. You won't see too many of these anywhere else in Australasia. But we remarked about it all weekend long. If you're standing behind the grandstands, you'd know straight away that this car was out on the circuit. A sound like no other.
And in these conditions, too much horsepower. Too much horsepower.
And you can hear it on the exit there at turn 4. Trying to lay the power down because it's starting to rain heavily again on the backside of the circuit. He'll pull away from Nick Ross. He'll need to use all that 3 decades of experience now behind the wheel of this number 77 car. Out of turn 6 and 7. That's Lance Hughes just ahead. Simon Evans, well, he's in the box seat right now with the wet tyres. He's up to second and set the fastest lap of the race so far. There'll be 10 laps to go at the end of this.
And everybody just giving all the painted white lines on the edges of the circuit and the curbs a really wide berth. The last thing you want to be doing while you're trying to get onto the throttle at slow speed is collecting one of those white lines. Little moment here.
That's Tim Edgell going off the track on the old circuit, rejoining really quick too, mind you, in the ATM entry.
So was Edgell one of the cars at the start that we saw in the background come in to put wets on?
He's on wets.
And he's still struggling to pull the car up in these conditions. So spare a thought for these two guys in Ross and Radicic, who are both on slicks. Look at the front wheel. Look at the rain coming down now. It is officially pouring down. And here comes that 700 horsepower from Radicic. I said the lap before, too much horsepower. Well, not in a straight line, but at slow speed trying to get on the throttle it is. And these two guys, even though they're fighting, Radicic and Ross, they look like they're actually making some inroads to catch the back of Lance Hughes up ahead. So Ross again, up the inside of Radicic. This time he'll get the job done cleanly. Now he needs to put his head down through this next section of right, left corner, and then up over onto the main straight. Oh, that's a wide entry for Ross. He needs to gap Radicic a little bit so that that straight line horsepower doesn't come into play.
These guys are doing a great job, in particular Nick Chester, who's leading the race, but we wonder for how long. There's the lap time differences, 2 seconds on the previous lap between Chester and Evans. That's slick tyre against wet tyre right now.
Well, I'm going to go with about the length of the back straight until they get to this braking zone. I reckon about that point, those wets will be about twice as good as the slicks that are on Chester's car.
Totally agree. They go past the 54 Falcon of Clark now, so starting to pick their way through the lap cars. Tim Edgell is still down the 11th position, 7 seconds quicker than the cars around, but he's lost so much time with putting the tyres on to begin with. He's really going to have to wait for it to team down with rain before that starts to come back to him. While Simon Evans is less than a second behind Nick Chester. First and second, you're watching the battle here for 4th and 5th. The Nissan Altima up against the Ford Mustang at the Husqvarna hairpin. Halfway home, race number 2 of the BNT New Zealand touring cars. As off the track goes John Midgley to the applause of the fans in the background.
They just need some number boards in the background, don't they? Out of 10, we'll give you a golf clap.
Let's see what it's like first. It's just on the exit and just gassed it up in these conditions. A debut weekend for...
And not even out on the painted lines, no. So just a little bit too much throttle too quickly. And I was wrong. Evans wasn't able to do anything with Chester on the previous lap. So they've done another 4 laps while we were watching those replays. Chester doing a brilliant job.
No, he is, considering that we thought Evans would have got past him several laps ago and maybe had 4 or 5 seconds on him. Hasn't been the case. He was great during opening practice here on Friday. In fact, both these cars were. Nick Chester, 38-year-old here from New Zealand, former New Zealand Super GT champion of Mitsubishi Evo 10 many seasons ago, and racing one of the X-Team Dynamic cars that never actually raced in the Supercars Championship. It was a spare chassis. It was brought back to New Zealand and turned into one of these New Zealand touring cars, producing about 750 horsepower.
Given how quickly Simon Evans has bridged that gap to Chester, I don't have an answer as to why he can't disperse of him so much quicker here. And we just heard Chester's car using the traction control on the way out of the hairpin to limit the amount of wheel spin. Kylie?
Guys, I just can give you a little update. Speaking to Chester's crew, they said he started the race on wet, so had foresight in the dummy grid to put the right rubber on. And Simon Evans said he was a bit of a victim through turn 1 racing yesterday. He needed to tune it up overnight because Chester certainly got him on the straights. He said the bumps were causing havoc with him, so just see how this plays out. Right,
so that closes the loop on that one. This is an even race right to the end. So Simon Evans, who picked off the cars one by one, will now have his work cut out, but lap traffic may play a part here. Lap 10 of 16, blue flag being shown to the Albany ITM entries. He pulls away and lets the leading pair through, and they have 14 seconds on Lance Hughes and Nick Ross, who are back in 3rd and 4th position.
So was Chester thinking, I'm not under any pressure here. I can't see Evans anywhere. He's out of the race. There's radio communication. I would have thought they would have told him he's come in for wets. He's not going to catch you, but he has. And it looks like he's caught him at such a rapid rate that it's actually caught Chester unaware. They look like they're now doing relatively similar pace. I feel like Evans has more speed in that car. He needs to disperse of Chester. Can you hear the traction control there? Limiting the amount of fuel going in. It's almost like they're on the pit lane limiter. Sounds aggressive. It's a grrr. And it's just going, I will help you to find traction.
Advantage maybe here for the 4 car as he's got the paddle shift, which has been brought into the series for the next gen cars. There's the sound of the traction control once again on the exit. Sounds like they're maxing out, but it's helping them with the acceleration out of the corners. And now the temperature starts to turn up as they come out of the Husqvarna hairpin. Drier conditions at this part of the circuit compared to the opposite side.
So a couple of sensors on the 2 rear wheels, and they will be able to talk to each other, and if there's slip or difference between them, there'll be a maths channel that'll say if there's a value relative or greater than X and Y, it will then stop that fuel from going in, give the rear of the car some more drive by not having that power available, and try and help them get off the road. Pretty cool.
Steve, slow-mo, look at the flex going through the bonnet just above the Chester sign in car 14. Right down the side of that car. This is the bumps we were talking about through turn 1. You don't really notice them when they go through at high speed, but the punishment these cars go through, quite phenomenal.
And those 3 support braces across the front bumper bar or splitter, keeping the bottom of the car as flat as possible. You can see how much flex there was in the bonnet and the doors. This is Ross around the outside of Hughes. Both cars sliding on those slippery circuit conditions. Ross using a bit of curb. That Nissan Altima looks like it rides the curbs pretty well in these conditions.
I don't think we gave that pass enough justice. That was pretty cool. In tricky conditions on the outside in turn number 1, and puts the Total Lubricants entry up into P3 in the closing stages. The front guys 16 seconds ahead of the Nissan Altima now. Windscreen wipers still working, but conditions improving for now.
Yeah, for now, exactly. I think they're going to change all day. And that move around the outside from Ross, I can guarantee you from my experience, what we just saw from the outside is completely different to what it would have felt like for both guys inside the car there, where they would have been so much on the edge of the grip limit, feeling like they're about to go off the road at any point. Great racing.
You think you would have got to the exit of turn 4 going, how did I do that?
Quite possibly. Or just high-fiving yourself
Yes.
and going, well done. Especially in the case of Nick Ross when you're on the outside.
Absolutely. More lap traffic ahead here. Chester holding back some incredible pressure here from Simon Evans. Car number 4, the return to the series this year, which kicks off at Pukekohe Park. Oh, gives him a tap at the exit of turn number 8. The series, in fact, kicks off here in November, but will finish when we come back for the ITM Auckland Super Sprint on Anzac Day weekend, April 24 to 26. Here at Pukekohe Park Raceway in 2020. In fact, most of the New Zealand Championships will finish that day, so it's a mega weekend of racing. So here at Pukekohe Park Raceway, here's the replay.
Chester here with the lights flashing violently to let the 54 know that he's coming. Evans going, I'm going to bomb it in here because I don't want to get stuck behind the 54 and lose any time. And while he's done that, he's made light contact with the back of Chester. No issues though, both are able to race on.
Here's Brad Ladthrope to Dale ITM cars, so they've got the Nigel car back on the circuit, but he's some 6 laps down after changing to wets. They're down at the turn 8 hairpin while the leaders are around in the first sector of the course. They'll have one more race this afternoon, a non-points paying round. This is virtually a live warm-up for this year's BNT New Zealand Touring Car Series. The Dale ITM crew watch on as their 2 cars play nicely out on the circuit.
They've done their bit. They've put wets on one of those cars. They can stand back now and watch this race.
At least they'll be warm.
So a little bit of a dry line starting to evolve here on the circuit. We do know, though, that both Nick Chester and Simon Evans are both on wets. Now, the issue that they're going to encounter is, as the circuit starts to dry, those wets basically are made up, the face of the tyre has all these blocks on it, and the blocks are there to disperse water and give you some grip when it's wet. But when it dries like this, the blocks heat up and the bottom edge of the block that connects to the carcass of the tyre starts to move around and walk around, and you get this terrible feeling. Let's see who can deal with that feeling the best out of these 2 guys.
Saw Sean Varney in the BMW 318. He's back in the pits and looks like his race is done. The man has raced in Formula Suzuki racing over here over the years and joined us in the Bathurst 6-hour in the high performance class, the VSS Redline Commodore earlier in the year. And now Evans knows it's go time as the sun comes out here at Pukekohe Park Raceway. Great shot of the wet and forget Holden on the exit of the turn 8 hairpin. It'll be 1 lap to go. Nick Chester has driven very well with a guy that's in an absolute hurry here this weekend.
And what we're seeing here in this battle is Simon Evans, when he's in clear air, has more pace, unquestionably. He was able to come from miles behind and catch Nick Chester, but Nick is driving incredibly smart. He knows where the strengths of his car are and where his weaknesses are, and he doesn't look like he can carry as much corner speed as Simon, but as soon as they get to this midpoint in the corner and he gets on that throttle, he's able to drive away from him. So he's driving to the strengths of the car to keep Simon behind, because I'm sure there's people at home going, when you got more pace, why can't you just pass him?
Yeah.
It's not that simple. You've got to use the benefit of your car, and Nick is holding Simon up. Oh, he's made a mistake though. Is that enough?
Just pulled the car up there at turn number 5, and this has lightened up the race with just a handful of corners to go. Evans will try the switchback here at the turn 8 hairpin. Tries the outside. So the only mistake that Chester has made has been on the final lap, but I think he might have just covered him off enough here in that number 14 car in a race that started with cars in pit lane putting new wet tyres on. It's going to be Nick Chester only just at the finish line, and I mean just. It was just under 0.2 of a second, or a car length at the end. Points pain or not, that is stressful for a team.
And the crowds loved it. We could hear them cheering and clapping. That was a brilliant race, guys. And the award to the hardest working item on the circuit, the traction control system for both those 2 cars.
Oh, they'll be screaming for mercy. Absolutely. Hand comes out. No points like we said, but man, oh man, these 2 turned on some incredible racing in very tricky conditions at the start. The sun came out, the track dried out. It's going to be one of those days here at Pukekohe Park Raceway. Nick Chester the winner by less than 0.2 of a second, back to Simon Evans. Nick Ross in 3rd, Lance Hughes, Paul Radicic cured the issues in that Mustang to finish in 5th. Rob Wallace, Brad Ladthrope, John Midgley, Tim Edgell, and Braden Phillips, the teenager, finishing in 10th place. And back to Darryl Clark. Sean Varney's car ended up back in the pits, and Nigel Carl spent several laps in the pits changing to the wet tyres. As we take a look at the highlights of the rolling start, we had most of the cars out in the track, a handful of cars in the pit lane as the race got underway here in race 2 of the BNT New Zealand touring cars. This is the view from Rob Wallace as Radicic made the move down the inside. This was Simon Evans making up several positions as he charged his way from the back of the field on wet tyres.
And when we get to the end of these highlights, just keep in mind that vision we saw of how much gap Nick Chester had all the way up the road on Simon Evans. There was this really cool battle between Radicic and Nick Ross that went on for a couple of laps. Ross having to work really hard to get by the Mustang, but once he did, he was able to drive away and work towards finding Lance Hughes up the road.
It's hard to think this was the same race. We saw those replays just a moment ago of the rain teeming down in turn number 1. This was the move from Nick Ross around the outside like Eminem was